All right, welcome on back to East Texas now. And joining me now, and you know our vet project, we have veterinarians from East Texas come in and we just kind of dive into some of your questions or just things that, we need to keep in mind when it comes to our animals and keeping them healthy. And joining us today, we have our very own, you've seen her before, Dr. Tammy Wilson with the Flint Veterinary Clinic. Today we're talking about nutrition,
Yes.
specifically for cats.
Yes.
What brought up the conversation was this recall that came out a few days ago.
Yeah.
And about how it was missing like an essential vitamin.
Right.
Out of all the things you'd think, essential vitamin, just one being missing can really shake up the whole process.
It can, yeah.
So going down to just like the basic
Right.
information, what do you need in a diet to kind of make it work when it comes to veggies, meat,
Yeah.
all those things? Break it down
Like
for us.
basic cat diet. So the last 40 to 50 years, things have kind of exploded as far as our understanding of cats' diets. And a cat diet from, 50 years ago is completely different than what we're seeing now. There's been fantastic research on looking at some of the macronutrients, protein, fat, carbs, fiber, all those kind of things, as well as fine-tuning the ability to get into vitamins, minerals, the balance between certain minerals relationship to each other, how everything is put together, what's important, what's not important, what cats have to have in their diet. And part of the organization that has helped bring that along is called AAFCO. That's its abbreviation. So it's the Association of American Feed Control Officials. And they've been able to give us guidelines, like pet food companies' guidelines, as far as how much of certain nutrients they need, how things balance, and if they have a diet that is evaluated, any pet food company that has their food evaluated by AAFCO can be very confident knowing it's complete and balanced and meets all the requirements, everything from the big things like the amount of protein down to the little fine-tuned details. And so the food recall might have occurred because they didn't check with the balanced requirements on that one critical nutrient and then, had a problem after that. So AAFCO has been really important in making sure that your cat is on a food that meets all of those requirements.
And I'm sure the product is most likely labeled with a
It is.
approved
There's a
and stamped.
label on it. It says, this food has been evaluated by AAFCO, is designed to be complete and balanced for that cat. So it'll say it on the label. You have to look for it though.
When you mentioned protein,
Yeah.
how much do cats need for protein? I mean,
Yeah.
because they're carnivores. In
Yeah.
my head, they're
Yeah.
throwing back mice and this, that, and the
Yes,
other.
yeah. So cats, that's another thing that's been kind of unique with cats. Cats are definitely not small dogs.
Right.
Their nutrients are different. Dogs are omnivores, so they can eat different, ingredients and do really well with it. Cats are strict, obligate carnivores.
Okay.
Their body system, their metabolism, everything is set up and centered around protein. One kind of unique example of that is that their protein requirements are much higher.
Okay.
Also, when we as people, we have blood sugar. If we eat carbs, we get blood sugar out of that. And when the blood sugar level gets high enough, it triggers insulin to be released, and the insulin lowers our blood sugar. It eliminates some that is extra, so glucose is a signal for people and it's a signal for dogs. With cats, it is not.
Okay.
Cats actually use protein, essentially amino acids, like the little parts of protein. Amino acids are the signal for a cat to release insulin. It's not glucose.
Oh,
so
wow.
their entire metabolism is set up around that. The other thing that's unique to cats with protein is there is a critical enzyme in the liver of us and dogs called glucokinase, and it converts extra glucose into the storage form called glycogen. So, if there's too much glucose, it's eliminated, it's converted, it's stored. Cats have minimal to no glucokinase in their liver. So if they have super high carbohydrate portion of their diet, they can't handle it. Their systems are designed around protein. So I would say that minimum protein in a cat's diet would be 30%, and that's what AAFCO has set as the absolute minimum. Ideally, if you're pushing to 40%, that's even better. So
Okay.
much higher level because their whole system is designed to be a carnivore.
Right. You can tell by their teeth. That's how they're made.
Yep.
So when talking about fats,
Yeah.
how important is that into the diet?
It's much more important for cats. I mean, fat is important in cell membranes, in brain function, in, certain vitamins require it to be absorbed. So it's very important. Cats have a really good ability to use fats or fatty acids as an energy source as well. Cats are basically little animals on, a ketone diet, on, a Atkins diet, super high protein, super high fat, minimal carb. Their body tolerates higher fat levels much better than ours and much better than dogs. So I think the minimum that AAFCO set for fat level in cats is around 9 to 10%, but they actually do much better in the 15 to 20% range.
So just boost it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a 20% fat diet in a cat and they tolerate it really well, whereas dogs and people generally don't. So fat is a very good source for them and much easier for them to tolerate.
Okay. So I kind of want to change things up here a little bit when talking about dry versus wet food.
Yes.
Where do you see the pros and the cons are for both?
Okay.
I know.
Cats could actually do well on one versus the other. They could
Okay.
eat all dry or they can eat all canned. It's more about meeting calorie requirements.
Okay.
The theory with a lot of dry food is that it helps with their teeth, but most cat food kibble is so little. They get some chewing action out of it, but cats could do perfectly well on an all canned food. Some people are not as apt to feed canned food because it might go bad. The cat might not eat it all. It might smell bad. They don't want to mess with it. So dry food is fine. Some people like to do a little of both. They have dry food out during the day and a little bit of canned at night. So there's not a huge necessity for dry versus canned. There are some cats that have certain medical conditions that do much better on a canned food than a dry food.
Okay.
But it kind of depends on the individual cat. But it's not absolutely you have to feed only dry or only canned or you have to mix both. It kind of depends on the cat. But they're both designed to be completely balanced, so they do well with both.
So you're not losing any nutritional value
No,
versus one over
absolutely
the
not.
other.
No.
Okay.
No, but the AAFCO requirements are set equally for canned food as they are dry food. It's just obviously the canned food is a much higher percentage of water, but when it's broken down, if you take all the water out of it, it's called dry matter. And the dry matter percentages on the canned food meet the same requirements or on the canned food meet the same as the dry food. It might actually have a little more protein.
Right.
Because it's easier to get protein into canned food than dry food. But the base nutrients are the same. It's just the amount of moisture that's in it.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure, of course, water plays a big factor in it
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
with the canned food, you're actually helping their water intake, which, of course, is helpful in
Yeah.
many aspects.
Yeah.
Going back to the vitamins, though,
Yeah.
and the recall that we were talking
Yeah.
about earlier, they had low levels of thiamine or
Yes.
vitamin
B1.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's say you had this food.
Yeah.
And your pet took it. What would happen if they didn't meet that requirement for B1?
Okay, so if we're talking B1 specifically, it is a bit of an energy source, but it's really critical in neurologic function and in
Okay.
eye function. So long term, you would end up with major problems with neurologic issues, weakness, tremors, seizures. I mean,
gosh,
if it's
okay.
especially if it's zero, and then they can end up with vision problems with their retinas, blindness, things like that can happen with B1 deficiency too.
Oh, wow. So that's like, is that the outcome you would see after like your first meal, or if
Oh,
you've
that
been
would
having
be that
it
would
for
be
a while?
long term. This may be
Okay.
something that a year down the road
Would become an
It
issue.
would become an issue, and it'd probably be kind of a slow onset issue as opposed to the cat's fine one day and then falling over the next. So it'd be kind of a build up, so to speak.
Gotcha. It's just cats are so funny, especially
Yeah.
with how they hide things.
So it may appear that something has happened very suddenly where it's kind of been a build up over time. And since
Okay.
cats are great at not telling us how they're
Yes,
feeling,
of course.
sometimes things have to be pretty extreme before the owners are aware of it. So
In the veterinary world, what
Yeah.
are some of the most common vitamin deficiencies that you see come through the door?
for cats.
Yes.
So a big one with cats that we don't see very often because foods are so good about including it is vitamin D. So if cats are missing vitamin D, we can run into again, there's some eye problems that can occur, but it's more important as far as bone development.
Okay.
So vitamin D deficiency is interesting in cats because we go out in the sun and we are able to convert inactive to active forms of vitamin D, and cats cannot.
Oh.
The sun doesn't allow that conversion to happen. It has to be in their diet. So
Really?
they will
Oh, wow.
end up with things like rickets and osteomalacia, which is weakening of the bones in adults, if vitamin D isn't in their diet, because they can't use sunlight to convert it.
Is it the fur, or is it just how their bodies are made?
Cats are aliens, and they're
Cats are aliens.
So
That's the biggest thing we're
another
learning
one,
today.
The other
Cats are
big
aliens.
thing with yes is one called taurine. It's an amino acid. It's an
Okay.
essential amino acid. So out of amino acids, there's 11 that cats have to have in their diet. They can't building block and make it in their body. There's essential amino acids they have to eat and have to come from diet, and taurine is one of them. And years ago, maybe 20 years ago, when the whole grain-free thing started,
Yes.
horrible thing for cats because taurine comes from certain carb sources,
Yeah.
including grains. So even if there's a small amount of processed grains in their food, they're getting taurine out of it. And if they don't have taurine, then one thing we'll see with cats, and we were seeing it in cats and dogs, is something called DCM, which is dilated cardiomyopathy,
Okay.
where the heart muscles weaken and enlarge and the heart gets big and the muscles fail and they go into congestive heart failure.
Oh, goodness,
Because they're
okay.
missing taurine, one simple little thing. So cats can be very sensitive to vitamin mineral deficiencies because their bodies can't make it or can't absorb it properly. It has to be dietary. So if we get into some diets that are either homemade diets or specialty diets, then we can run into some of those problems because those diets aren't validated to be complete.
Okay.
So-
So just making sure that you're double checking your food.
Yes.
What is
Yes.
something, to kind of like wrap us up in,
Yeah.
a nice little bow? What are some of the big key factors you want people to know about making sure the diet is complete?
Yeah, one of them is you can look for the AFCO statement. It is on the box. If you don't see it on the bag, you can reach out to the company and tell them you want to make sure that it was verified to be balanced, complete, run at AFCO, things like that. I would tell people to be very cautious on homemade diets.
Okay.
I know people are very concerned about preservatives and things like that, and that is completely legitimate, but you
Yes.
have to be careful because if we make something at home and it's like, oh, it's got lots of fruits and veggies and meat, and so it's going to be fine, you may be missing some of those key trace minerals or trace vitamins, or it might not have enough fat or fiber, or and you could inadvertently be causing your pet long-term health issues. So work with a veterinary nutritionist or a veterinarian that's very good at diets because it's not as simple as throwing things together
Right.
and making it look pretty.
You're not
There's
just
a-
boiling a chicken on
no,
the, yeah.
no, there's a lot of labeling misconceptions. That's the last thing I want to maybe mention.
Yes,
is
please.
That, again, people want to feed the best food for their pets.
Right.
And so when you see words like organic and holistic and all natural and
Yes.
things that appeal to us to make us feel better, there is absolutely no FDA regulated legal nutrition for those terms. You put organic on the label and it doesn't have any legal meaning behind it. It helps sell the food. So be careful on being swayed by foods that are double the cost because they're organic. There's no legal precedence for putting that on a label.
What about the folks who may be fearful or just concerned
Yeah.
with the word byproduct on an ingredient list?
The interesting thing with byproduct is again, this is a labeling requirement. So
Right.
if something says chicken, it is chicken muscle. It's muscle of chicken. That's what it is. If it says chicken meal, it is dehydrated muscle. Think of it as jerky.
Okay.
So meal just means it's dehydrated. So it might actually be a higher protein level because instead of chicken with,
Big chunks.
chunk of chicken, it's dehydrated chicken.
Got it.
Byproduct generally is organ meat.
Okay.
So it's not, scraps, it's not hair, it's not,
Yeah.
the majority of byproduct is organ meat, which cats will eat naturally.
And it has some of those trace nutrients and vitamins.
Yep.
Okay.
And so, again, just getting some informed information on what actually the label term means can be helpful with your pet.
And I'm sure having those conversations about, I mean, even if you just go to your doctor and you ask, veterinarians will ask, what are
Yeah.
you feeding? What brand
Yes.
are you feeding?
Yes.
And
Yes.
do you find that helpful for people?
It does. It does. I had a client this morning, and her dog is having some digestive issues, and so we were, sending off some blood work. But we're also going to have a talk about diet because she has tried some different diets and
Right.
was looking at venturing into a homemade option. And it's like, let's check a few things, and then we can have a talk about making sure if you do want to do that,
Sure.
go for it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the time or the ambition to cook for 200 pounds of dog at my house.
Yes.
And so, but you would want to make sure that all those important nutrients are included. So if we have owners that are ambitious enough to do that, absolutely, but get some guidance before you do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Dr. Tammy Wilson
Yeah.
with the Flint Veterinary Clinic. We'll see you next time. And of
Yes.
course, if you ever have any questions about what we should be covering, make sure you let us know. news@kltv.com, and we'll make sure to bring it up to our vets when they join us every Thursday here at 12:30 on East Texas Now. We'll be back in just a quick moment.